Most people go camping to get away from clocks. No traffic lights, no schedules, no inbox, just a fire ring, a tent, and a few quiet hours where the world feels simple again. But sometimes out there, time does not stay where you leave it. A sound happens before it should. A trail brings you back to the same marker. A name appears before anyone writes it down. And once the woods start remembering things you haven't done yet, the question stops being what is outside your tent. It becomes whether you can trust your own memory. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. I heard the morning before it happened. That is the cleanest way I can say it, even though it still sounds wrong to me. I do not mean I had a dream. I do not mean I woke up confused and guessed what would happen later. I mean I heard a normal campground morning while it was still the middle of the night. I was camping alone at a small campground in Idaho, about 40 minutes off the main highway. It was not deep wilderness. That is important. There were numbered sites, a gravel loop road, a bear-proof trash bin near the restroom, and one wooden board by the entrance with faded rules stapled under plastic. I had Site 9. It was nothing special. A flat tent pad, a picnic table, a metal fire ring, and a few pine trees close enough to scrape together when the wind moved. There were maybe 6 other campers in the loop, most of them RVs. A family had taken the site across from mine. I remember them because the little boy kept riding a red scooter in slow circles around their picnic table until his father finally told him to stop before he hit the fire pit. I got there late afternoon, set up the tent, ate a turkey sandwich out of a cooler, read a paperback for about 20 minutes, though I kept rereading the same page because I was more tired than I wanted to admit. By 9:30, I had put out the fire and crawled into my sleeping bag. There was nothing strange about the night at first. No footsteps, no voices in the trees, no figure standing at the edge of the campsite. Just wine fabric and the occasional dull clank from the bear-proof trash bin whenever someone threw something away down near the restroom. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. I know the exact time because my phone was on the floor of the tent beside my backpack, and when I opened my eyes, the screen was already glowing. I must have touched it in my sleep. At first, I thought I had woken because I needed water. Then I heard a car door close. Not slam, close. A soft, tired campground sound, the kind people make when they are trying not to wake anyone. A second later, I heard the click of a cooler latch. Then the heavy metal scrape of the bear-proof trash bin opening. Then a child coughed once. Then tires rolled slowly over gravel. I lay there in my sleeping bag, listening, still half asleep and mildly annoyed. Someone was leaving early, that was all. Maybe they had a long drive. Maybe the kid was sick. Maybe they just wanted to beat traffic back to Boise or wherever they were from. But the longer I listened, the less it sounded like someone leaving at night. It sounded like morning. That is what bothered me. The rhythm was too ordinary, too awake. A family packing up after breakfast, doors opening and closing, a cooler being loaded, trash being tossed before checkout, tires crunching away from a campsite after everyone had already been up for a while. I waited for headlights to pass across the tent. None came. I waited for an engine to get louder. It did not. The gravel sound faded like the vehicle had rolled out of the loop, but the campground around me stayed completely dark and still. I reached for my phone again. 2:13 a.m., the same minute. And outside, somewhere near the road, the last little rocks settled under tires that I could not see. I stayed still for longer than I should have. That sounds strange because nothing had touched the tent. Nothing had whispered my name. Nothing had tried to get in. It was only a few ordinary sounds in the dark. But that was exactly why I did not move. If I opened the tent and saw headlights pulling out of the loop, then it was nothing. Someone had left early. End of story. I could roll over, get annoyed at myself, and go back to sleep. If I opened the tent and saw nothing, then I had to decide what nothing meant. I waited another minute. No engine, no voices, no more gravel. The campground was so quiet I could hear my own breathing inside the sleeping bag. Finally, I sat up and reached for my flashlight. I did not turn it on right away. I unzipped the tent door first, slowly, because some childish part of me still thought a flashlight beam might make whatever was outside look back. Cold air slid in through the opening. I looked out. The loop road was empty. No taillights, no headlights moving through the trees, no soft glow from an RV backing out. The family's site across from mine was dark. Their SUV was still parked beside their tent. The little red scooter was lying on its side near their picnic table, exactly where I had seen it before going to bed. The bear-proof trash bin sat near the restroom path. Closed, I stared at it for a while, waiting for my eyes to adjust. It was one of those heavy green metal bins with the latch you had to lift and pull at the same time. It always made noise. There was no way to open it quietly, especially not in the middle of the night, but it was closed. The restroom light hummed under its yellow cover. A moth bumped against it once, then disappeared into the dark. I told myself the sound had carried from the highway. That was possible. Sound travels strangely at night. Maybe a truck had gone over a rough patch of road. Maybe my brain had turned that into a cooler latch and a trash bin because I was sleeping in a campground. That explanation helped for about 10 seconds. Then I remembered the child coughing. I had heard that clearly. One small cough close enough that I had pictured a kid standing beside a car in pajamas, half awake and miserable. I looked back at the family's tent. Nothing moved. I almost called out. I even opened my mouth. Then I stopped. Because what was I going to say? Did your kid just cough in the future? I zipped the tent halfway closed and sat there with my phone in my hand. My thumb hovered over the flashlight button, then moved to the Notes app instead. I typed one line. 2:13 a.m. heard someone leave. I stared at it after I wrote it. It looked stupid, too simple for how wrong it felt. But I saved it anyway because I wanted proof that I had not invented the sequence later. Car door, cooler latch, trash bin, child cough, gravel. I added that underneath. Then I put the phone face down beside my backpack and tried to lie back. The campground stayed quiet. For a moment, I convinced myself that was the end of it. I had made a note. I had checked outside. Everything was normal. I could deal with being embarrassed in the morning. Then from somewhere near the road, very small and very clear, a child's voice said, "Bye." I stopped breathing. It did not sound playful. It did not sound close. It sounded like the last word from someone already leaving. I opened the tent again so fast the zipper caught on the fabric. The road was empty. The trash bin was closed. The family's SUV was still there. And my phone lying face down beside my backpack lit up by itself. 2:13 a.m. I do not remember falling back asleep. That bothers me almost as much as the rest of it. I remember lying there with my eyes open, staring at the roof of the tent, listening for anything else. I remember the cold spot near my feet, where the sleeping bag had slipped off the pad. I remember checking the time again and again until the numbers stopped feeling like numbers. 2:26 a.m., 2:41 a.m., 3:08 a.m. After that, there is just a gap. When I opened my eyes again, the tent was gray with real morning light. For a few seconds, I felt relief so strong it almost made me laugh. Morning has a way of making fear seem childish. The thin blue light, the smell of damp pine needles, the distant sound of someone coughing outside a tent. All the things that feel threatening at night become ordinary again once you can see them. Then I heard a car door close. I sat up so fast my shoulder hit the side of the tent. One soft click, not loud, not dramatic. Exactly the same sound. I reached for my phone. 7:04 a.m. Before I could move, I heard the cooler latch. One click up, one hollow plastic bump as the lid opened. Then came the heavy scrape of the bear-proof trash bin. Metal against metal, same length, same rhythm, same little pause at the end like someone had struggled with the latch before it gave. My Notes app was still open when I unlocked the phone. 2:13 a.m. heard someone leave. Car door, cooler latch, trash bin, child cough, gravel. I was still looking at the words when the cough came. A child's cough, small, dry, half asleep. I got out of the tent so fast I nearly tore the zipper. The family across from me was packing their SUV. The father was standing beside the rear passenger door, one hand still on the handle. The mother was near the picnic table, lifting a small blue cooler off the bench. Their little boy was by the bear-proof trash bin in pajama pants and a hoodie, both hands on the latch, pulling it open with his whole body. Everything was normal. That was the worst part. No one looked frightened. No one was staring into the woods. The father was tired and quiet. The mother was trying to fit too many bags into the back of the SUV. The boy dropped a paper plate into the bin and let the lid fall shut with a dull metal slap. I stood outside my tent in yesterday's t-shirt, watching them like I had just seen them walk out of a photograph. The father noticed me and gave a small apologetic wave. "Sorry if we woke you," he said, trying to get an early start. I almost said you already did. Instead, I just nodded. My mouth was too dry to speak. The mother snapped the cooler shut and carried it to the SUV. The same click. The same hollow plastic bump. The father closed the rear door again. The sound landed in my chest because I already knew it. Then the boy coughed once. I looked down at my phone. I wanted the note to be gone. I wanted to see that I had typed something vague in the dark, and my brain had filled in the rest. But it was all still there, exact and stupid and plain. Car door, cooler latch, trash bin, child cough, gravel. The father started the SUV. Its tires rolled slowly over the loop road as he pulled away from the site. The gravel made the same soft crunch I had heard in the dark. Not similar, the same. Even the small pause near the bend where one tire slipped into a shallow rut matched the sound I remembered. The SUV passed my campsite. The boy sat in the back seat, buckled in his red scooter wedged beside him. He turned his head and looked at me through the window. Then he raised one hand, a normal little goodbye wave. I did not wave back. I was watching his mouth. He said something through the glass. I could not hear it over the engine and gravel, but I did not need to. I knew the shape of the word. Bye. The SUV rolled out of the loop and disappeared behind the trees. Only then did I notice that my phone screen had gone dark. When I tapped it awake, the note was still open. Under the line I had written at 2:13 a.m., there was one more word. Bye. I packed faster than I have ever packed in my life. Not cleanly, not carefully. I just wanted the tent down, the bag zipped, and the campground behind me. I kept telling myself not to look at the family's empty site because if I looked too long, I would start trying to understand it. I did not want to understand it anymore. The fire ring was cold. My cooler was still under the picnic table. My paperback was face down where I had left it the night before, pages damp from the morning air. Everything at my site looked ordinary, and that made my hands shake worse. When I pulled up the ground tarp, something stuck to the wet underside. A receipt. It was folded once and pressed flat into the dirt like it had been there all night. I almost threw it away without reading it. Then I saw the printed campsite number, Site 9. I unfolded it slowly. It was from the campground kiosk near the entrance. The kind of receipt you get if you pay or check in at the machine instead of online. It had my first and last name, my license plate number, 1 adult, 1 vehicle, 1 tent. The timestamp was 7:04 a.m. I had not gone to the kiosk that morning. I had not gone to it at all. I had booked the site online 2 weeks earlier, printed the confirmation at home, and clipped the little paper permit to the post when I arrived. I checked my email right there with my hands still dirty from the tarp. The online reservation was there, paid in advance, no kiosk receipt, no second check-in. But the paper in my hand was real. The ink was slightly blurred from moisture, but I could read every line. At the bottom below the total, someone had printed a short message where the kiosk usually says thank you. Wake up completed. I folded the receipt back up and put it in my jacket pocket. That was stupid. I know that. I should have left it there, but fear does strange things to proof. You do not want it near you, but you cannot stand the idea of walking away without it. I drove out before 8. The family was gone. The bear-proof trash bin was closed. The red scooter was gone from the site across the loop. I passed the entrance board and did not slow down. When my GPS connected, it recalculated the route home. Arrival dam Sundertinam. I stared at it until the truck drifted toward the shoulder and gravel snapped under the tires. Then the screen blinked, corrected itself, and showed a normal afternoon arrival. I never went back to that campground. For a while, I told myself the receipt was the worst part. It was not. About 3 weeks later, I found a voice memo on my phone. I do not remember recording it. The file name was just a date and time. 2:13 a.m. I played it once. There was a car door, a cooler latch, the bear-proof trash bin, gravel. Then after a long pause, my own voice whispered 2 words. Not yet. I used to think the strangest thing that could happen at a campground was hearing someone walk too close to your tent after midnight. I was wrong. The strangest thing I ever saw happened at 1:17 in the morning, when I opened my eyes inside our tent and thought I had somehow slept until dawn. Megan and I had driven down to a small state campground in Oregon for a weekend trip. It was one of those places that looked ordinary in every way. Numbered sites, a self-pay box near the entrance, a restroom building with one yellow light over the door, fire rings made of blackened metal, picnic tables carved up with initials and old pocket knife marks. We were in Site 18, close enough to see the gravel road, but far enough back that the pine trees made the place feel private. There were a few other campers around, but not many. A small RV 2 sites down, a tent trailer near the restroom, another couple at the site beside ours, though we barely saw them after sunset. Nothing about that evening felt wrong. We made sandwiches on the picnic table. Megan complained that I had bought the wrong kind of chips. I told her plain ones were safer because every campground raccoon in America probably knew what barbecue smelled like. She laughed at that, and I remember that part clearly because later I kept trying to hold on to normal details. We bought firewood from the ranger kiosk before it closed. The wood was damp at the edges, so it smoked more than it burned for the first half hour. By 10:30, the fire had finally settled into a low orange bed. We sat there until the cold started getting through our hoodies. I checked my phone before we climbed into the tent. 10:42 p.m. battery at 42%. No service, but that was expected. Megan fell asleep fast. I did not. I remember lying there with my sleeping bag twisted around one leg, listening to the little sounds you only notice when you are trying too hard to sleep. Nylon shifting, wind moving through branches, the soft pop of wood in the fire ring outside. At some point I must have drifted off. Then I woke up to birds. Not one bird, not a random chirp. Morning birds, that full layered sound they make right before sunrise when every tree seems to wake up at once. For a few seconds I just lay there, confused and dry-mouthed, thinking we had overslept. The inside of the tent was no longer black. It had that pale blue-gray glow that comes through fabric at dawn. I reached for my phone, 1:17 a.m. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for it to change. It did not. Outside the tent, the birds kept singing. I did not wake Megan right away. That is the part I keep thinking about, because it sounds stupid when I say it now. But at the time, I was not scared yet. I was irritated, confused, half asleep. The kind of feeling you get when something simple refuses to make sense, and your brain keeps trying to force it into a normal shape. I checked the time again, 1:18 a.m. The tent fabric was still glowing like morning. I unzipped the door just enough to look out. Cold air came in and hit my face. The campground was visible in a way it should not have been. Not bright exactly, but washed in that flat gray-blue light that happens right before sunrise. I could see the picnic table, the gravel pad, the dark line of pine trees behind our site, even the restroom building down the road with its yellow light still burning over the entrance. But there was no sun, no orange line behind the trees, no direction the light was coming from. It was just everywhere. I stepped outside in my socks, which immediately got damp from the ground. That annoyed me too, and I remember whispering a curse under my breath because I was still treating the whole thing like an inconvenience. Then I saw the fire ring. When Megan and I had gone to bed, there had still been heat in it. Not flames, but those deep red coals that pulse when the wind touches them. I had checked it twice before crawling into the tent because I am paranoid about leaving campfires alive. Now the fire ring was full of pale gray ash. It looked like morning after ash collapsed and cold, with the charred ends of the logs broken in on themselves. I held my hand over the metal rim. Nothing. I told myself damp wood could burn faster than I expected. I told myself maybe I had been asleep longer than I thought, and my phone was wrong. That explanation lasted about 5 seconds, until I remembered the clock in the truck. I leaned through the driver's side window and looked at the dashboard. 1:19 a.m. The exact same wrong answer. Behind me, I heard a cooler lid slap shut. I turned around so fast I almost slipped. At the campsite next to ours, the couple we had barely noticed the night before were packing up. The man was folding a camp chair. The woman was rolling a sleeping pad against the picnic table. Their tent was already half collapsed, wet with dew. They moved slowly, normally, like people who had done this 100 times. The man glanced over at me. He smiled like neighbors do when they do not want a conversation, but also do not want to be rude. "You folks slept late," he said. For a second, I almost laughed. I actually opened my mouth to say, "It's 1 in the morning," but I did not, because he did not sound like he was joking. The tent behind me rustled. Megan pushed the door open and squinted out, her hair flattened on one side from sleep. "What are you doing?" she whispered. I pointed at the campground, at the color of the sky, at the couple packing their car in the next site. She looked annoyed for about 2 seconds. Then she saw the light. "What time is it?" she asked. I handed her my phone. She stared at it, then looked up slowly. That was when she pointed above the tree line and said the thing I had not let myself notice yet. "It's bright in every direction." Megan did what she always does when something scares her. She got practical. She pulled on her hoodie, stepped out of the tent, and asked me to check the cooler while she found the camp stove. Her voice was low and annoyed, not panicked. I think she was trying to keep both of us from saying out loud what we were already thinking. Maybe if we made coffee, the morning would start making sense. That was how she put it. I opened the cooler under the picnic table. The ice had melted more than it should have, leaving the sandwiches floating in a few inches of gray water. 2 cans of cold brew sat against the side, unopened, still slick with condensation. I remember that clearly because Megan had bought them at a grocery store outside Eugene. She said they were for the real morning, when neither of us wanted to deal with boiling water before driving home. I lifted 1 can and shook it, full. Then something crinkled near my foot. There was a black trash bag tied to one leg of the picnic table. I had not noticed it before. It was one of ours, the cheap drawstring kind we kept in the truck. The knot was tight, and the plastic was wet with dew. I touched it with the toe of my sock. Metal shifted inside. I untied the bag slowly, already feeling stupid for being nervous about trash. Inside were 2 empty cold brew cans. Same brand, same dented silver pull tabs, same blue label with the mountain on it, both crushed lightly in the middle like someone had squeezed them after drinking. For a few seconds, I just stared down into the bag. Then I looked back at the cooler. The 2 unopened cans were still there. Megan came up behind me with the stove in one hand and a small pot in the other. What she asked. I handed her one of the empty cans. She looked at it then, at the cooler, then at me. Her face changed in a way I had only seen a few times before. Not fear exactly, more like her mind had reached for an explanation and found nothing to grab. "Did you drink one last night?" she asked. "Number. You're sure?" I almost snapped at her. That is another thing I hate remembering. I almost got angry because she was asking the only reasonable question. Instead, I said both of them are still in there. She set the stove down on the picnic table. At the next site, the other couple had almost finished packing. Their tent was folded. Their chairs were in the back of their Subaru. The man was tightening a strap around a storage bin. The woman stood near the fire ring looking into the trees like she was waiting for someone to call her name. Megan watched them for a moment. Then she said, "Ask them what time it is." I did not want to. Not because I was afraid of them. They looked ordinary, tired, middle-aged, the kind of people who had a bin-labeled kitchen gear and probably kept their campsite cleaner than their garage. That made it worse. I walked halfway toward their site, stopping at the edge of the gravel road. "Hey," I called quietly. The man looked over. "Sorry," I said. "This is going to sound weird, but do you know what time it is?" He glanced at his wrist, but I could not see whether he actually wore a watch. "Little after 6, he said. Megan made a small sound behind me. I checked my phone again. 1:22 a.m. I held it up, screen facing him. Mine says 1:22. The man looked at the screen for less than a second. Then he looked past me toward our tent. "Yeah," he said, "they do that here." I waited for him to smile. He did not. The woman beside him zipped a duffel bag too hard. The sound cut through the bird noise. Megan stepped closer to me. I could hear the gravel under her shoes. "What does that mean?" she asked. The man did not answer right away. His wife did. She kept her eyes on the trees while she spoke. "We always leave before it gets dark again." I remember the exact way she said it. Not dramatic, not warning us, not trying to scare us. She said it like someone saying they always fill up before crossing the desert, like it was just one of those rules you learned after doing it wrong once. Before either of us could ask another question, the birds stopped. All of them. At once. The campground did not go silent gradually. It dropped into silence so fast it felt like someone had closed a door over the whole place. The blue-gray light around us began to thin. That is the only word I have for it. Thin. The picnic table lost its edges first, then the road, then the shape of the restroom building down the hill. The yellow bulb above the door grew brighter because everything around it was getting darker. Megan grabbed my sleeve. The man at the next site shut the back of the Subaru. I heard the latch click. I turned toward the sound, but the site beside ours was empty. No Subaru, no folded tent, no couple. Just a dark patch of gravel, a cold fire ring, and 2 long rectangles of flattened grass where their tent and car had been. The sky above the trees was black again. My phone still said 1:22 a.m. Behind us, from inside our fire ring, a piece of wood popped, small and sharp, like it had just caught flame. For a second, neither of us moved. We just stood there in the dark, staring at our fire ring. The ash that had been pale and cold a few minutes earlier was gone. Not moved, not scattered. Gone. In its place were the same half-burned logs I remembered seeing before we went to sleep, stacked in that careless little collapse they had made when the damp wood finally caught. A red line of heat glowed under the bark. Then one of the logs shifted and gave off another small pop. Megan whispered my name. I do not know why that scared me more than if she had screamed. Maybe because she was trying so hard not to. Maybe because up until then, part of me had still been waiting for one clean explanation. Some campground prank, some weird weather thing, some sleep problem we were sharing because we had both been exhausted. But you cannot explain ash turning back into coals. I stepped closer to the fire ring and felt heat on my shins. Real heat, the kind that dries your socks if you stand close enough. I looked at Megan. Her face was lit orange from below, and for one ugly second I thought of all the campfire stories people tell for fun. People around a fire pretending to be scared because it feels safe to be scared when you know where the light is coming from. This did not feel like that. "We're leaving," she said. I nodded before she finished saying it. That was the first fully smart thing either of us did that night. We did not argue. We did not investigate the empty site beside us. We did not walk to the restroom building or try to find the couple. We turned back to our tent and started throwing things into bags. Not packing, throwing. Sleeping bags, pillows, flashlights, the camp stove still sitting cold on the picnic table, the unopened cans from the cooler. I remember my hands shaking so badly that I dropped the same headlamp 3 times before Megan took it from me and clipped it to the outside pocket of her backpack. The whole campground was dark again, but it felt darker than it had been before. The kind of dark that presses close to the edge of your flashlight beam. The birds did not come back. That silence made every small sound feel too loud. Nylon dragging over dirt, zippers catching, the cooler lid squeaking, Megan breathing through her mouth because she was trying not to cry. I kept glancing at the site next to ours. It stayed empty. There was no car, no tent, no couple, but the ground still had signs of them. 2 damp rectangles in the grass, a flattened line where their tires had been, a few pieces of bark kicked away near the fire ring. That almost made it worse. If they had never been there, I could have told myself something was wrong with me. But something had been there. Someone had packed up beside us in the morning light at 1 in the morning. Someone had spoken to us. Someone had said they always left before it got dark again. I stuffed the tent poles into their bag without folding them right. Megan was already at the truck with the cooler. Then she stopped. "Where are the keys?" I checked my jacket pocket. Nothing. I checked my jeans, the front pocket, back pocket, the small coin pocket, because panic makes you stupid in very specific ways. Nothing. Megan stared at me. "You had them," she said. "I know." "You locked the truck after dinner." "I know." I hated how sharp my voice came out, but I was scared by then. Not confused, not irritated, scared. We searched the tent first, then under the sleeping pads, then inside the bear-safe food bin, even though I knew I would never put truck keys in there. Megan checked the picnic table. I checked around the fire ring, staying farther away from it than I needed to. The coals kept glowing. I found the black trash bag still tied to the table leg. The 2 empty cold brew cans were still inside. I almost told Megan, but I did not. There was no reason to make her look at them again. After maybe 5 minutes, she said, "There." Her voice came from beside the driver's door. The truck was unlocked. The keys were sitting in the cup holder. I know they had not been there. I know it in the same way I know my own name. I had zipped them into the inner pocket of my jacket before crawling into the tent. I remember doing it because the zipper had snagged on the fabric. But there they were. The little plastic grocery store rewards tag on my keyring was facing up. The metal house key was tucked under it. The truck key sat on top like someone had placed it there carefully. Megan reached in and grabbed them. Then she froze again. "What?" I asked. She pointed at the driver's seat. It was pushed all the way back. I am not tall. I never drive like that. If I had sat down with the seat that far back, my foot would barely touch the brake. Megan could not have done it either. Someone taller had been sitting there. That was the shape my mind gave it before I could stop myself. Someone taller. I opened the door and leaned in. The cab smelled like cold air and old coffee. The dome light came on weak and yellow. The trip meter glowed on the dash. When we arrived, I had reset it out of habit. I do that on camping trips because I like knowing how far we drive off the main highway. It should have said 14.6 miles. It said 32.6, 18 miles more. I stared at the number until my eyes hurt. Megan saw it too. "Did you drive somewhere?" she asked. She did not ask it like an accusation. She asked it like she was hoping there was a gap in her own memory too. Like maybe if both of us had forgotten, it would somehow be less impossible. "No," I said. My voice did not sound like mine. I walked around the truck with my flashlight. The tires were dry. No new mud in the treads. No gravel dust thrown up along the lower doors. No broken pine needles stuck under the bumper. Nothing that looked like we had driven 18 miles on a campground road in the middle of the night. But the truck said we had. That was enough. We stopped trying to pack properly. We left the tent half collapsed and shoved it into the bed with the poles still inside. We threw the chairs on top. Megan got in first and locked her door before I had even closed the tailgate. I was about to climb into the driver's seat when I saw something on the picnic table, a self-pay envelope, the kind you tear from the little metal box at the campground entrance. The top corner was already ripped off where the permit tag should have been. It lay flat in the dark, held down by a small wet stone. I had not taken one. We had paid online. I knew that. Megan knew that. We had the reservation email on her phone. Still, my name was written across the envelope. First and last. In my handwriting, under it, where the campsite number went, someone had written 18. And below that, in a smaller line I did not remember ever writing, were 4 words. "Second morning paid in full." I did not take the envelope with me. I did not touch it. I got in the truck, started the engine, and backed out so fast the cooler slid hard against the tailgate. As we pulled onto the gravel road, Megan kept looking straight ahead. Neither of us said anything until Site 18 disappeared behind the trees. The road out of the campground looked longer than I remembered. That might have been fear. I know that. Fear stretches distance. It makes a quarter-mile of gravel feel like a county road, but I had driven in the evening before, and I remembered the shape of the place. The loop road curved past the restroom building, then the host site, then the self-pay board near the entrance. After that, it was just a narrow road through the trees until it met the highway. We passed the restroom building. The yellow light over the door buzzed softly. We passed the host site. The little camper was dark. No porch light, no truck parked outside, no sign of anyone sleeping in there. Then we reached the entrance board. Megan grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to make me slow down. There was a white paper pinned below the campground rules under the line about quiet hours. It had not been there when we checked in. I am sure of that because I had stood there reading the rules while Megan looked for the site number on the map. Quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Keep food secured. Fires must be fully extinguished. And under those on a separate piece of paper in black marker, check out before second sunrise. I did not stop. Megan said my name once, but not like she wanted me to pull over. More like she needed to prove she could still speak. I kept driving. The gravel road narrowed after the entrance. The trees leaned close on both sides, and the headlights caught small white flashes where signs reflected back at us. Speed limit, one way, no dumping, normal signs, normal things. That almost made me angry. I wanted the road to look wrong. I wanted the trees to bend over the truck, or the signs to repeat, or the campground to circle back on itself. Something obvious, something I could point to later and say, see, that is where reality broke. Instead, everything looked ordinary again. That was worse. Megan held my phone in both hands, watching the time like it might move if she stared long enough. 1:41 a.m., no service. The truck heater was blowing too hot, but neither of us turned it down. My socks were still wet, and I could feel them cold against the pedals. Every few seconds, something shifted in the bed of the truck and made me flinch. The tent poles, the chairs, the cooler, normal things thrown in wrong. We drove for maybe 15 minutes before the first bar of service appeared on my phone. Megan saw it before I did. It changed, she said. I looked down. The time jumped. Not slowly, not minute by minute. 1 second it was 1:41 a.m. The next it was 6:08 a.m. Outside the windshield, the sky began to lighten for real. I know that sounds impossible to separate from what had already happened, but it was different. This time there was a direction to it, a pale line behind the trees, a slow orange edge coming up beyond the road, a real morning arriving the way morning is supposed to arrive. Neither of us said anything. A few miles later, we found a gas station on the side of the highway, one of those small rural places with 2 pumps, a faded lottery sign and a coffee machine visible through the front window. The kind of place that feels safe only because the lights are too bright. I parked near the air pump instead of the front door. I did not want anyone to see how badly my hands were shaking. Megan went inside to use the restroom. Before she got out, she looked at me and said, "Don't open anything." I nodded. Then as soon as she was inside, I opened the tailgate. I still do not know why. Maybe I needed one thing to be normal. Maybe I wanted to see the cooler, the chairs, the half-collapsed tent, and prove to myself that we had left in a panic, but had still left one version of that campsite behind. The black trash bag was in the corner of the truck bed, still tied, wet with dew. I stood there for a long time before I touched it. Inside were the 2 empty cold brew cans. Same blue labels, same mountain logo, same crushed middles. I backed away from the tailgate and almost stepped into the parking lot. Then I looked at the cooler. It was sitting on its side, partly wedged under the tent fabric. I opened it with 2 fingers. The 2 unopened cold brew cans were still inside. By then I was not trying to explain it anymore. That is the honest truth. There is a point where your mind stops looking for answers because answers would mean you are still standing inside a world that has rules. I did not feel like that anymore. I felt like something had let us leave, but not because we had escaped. More like we had been finished with. Megan came back from the restroom pale and quiet. She had bought 2 coffees but left them both on top of the trash can outside the door. "I can't drink anything," she said. I closed the cooler. We drove home without stopping again. For a few days, we did not talk about it much. That surprises people when I tell them. They expect screaming arguments, some dramatic breakdown. But the truth is, we both went very still afterward. We unpacked the truck in the driveway. We threw away the food from the cooler. We hosed mud off the tent even though neither of us remembered it getting muddy. Then we put everything in the garage and acted like that was what people did after a bad camping trip. 3 days later, I found the photo. I was looking through my camera roll for a picture of the campsite sign because some desperate part of me wanted to search for complaints about that campground. Missing time, weird light, anything. There were not many photos from the trip. Megan by the fire, the picnic table, a blurry shot of the trees, one picture of Site 18 when we first arrived. Then there was one I did not remember taking. It showed our campsite in daylight, real daylight. The tent was already packed. The chairs were folded. The cooler was beside the truck. The fire ring was gray and dead. Megan was standing near the passenger door with her back to the camera, one hand on the handle like she was about to get in. I zoomed in until the image broke into pixels. Her hoodie was the same one she wore that morning. The truck bed was packed neatly, not thrown in. Neatly. The photo metadata said 6:08 a.m. That was the exact time my phone had jumped to on the road. The exact time we had been pulling into the gas station. I have shown that photo to Megan only once. She looked at it for maybe 2 seconds, then told me to delete it. I did not. I know I should have. I know keeping it was stupid. But sometimes fear makes you hold on to proof, even when the proof makes your life worse. The photo is still on an old hard drive now, not on my phone. I could not stand seeing it by accident. The only physical thing I kept from that trip is one of the empty cold brew cans. I found it again weeks later in the garage, even though I thought I had thrown both away at the gas station. It was sitting on the shelf above the camping bins, crushed lightly on one side, the blue label peeling from the damp. Megan wanted me to get rid of it. I told her I would. I did not. It is still there. Most of the time it just looks like trash. But every now and then when the garage gets cold in the morning, I pick it up and smell smoke. Not gasoline, not dust, campfire smoke. The damp kind that comes from wood that never really dried. And for just a second before I put it back, I hear birds. The first time I signed that campground logbook, my name was already there. I do not mean someone had written a name that looked like mine. I do not mean I misread bad handwriting in poor light. I mean, my full name was there in blue ink on the line above the one I was about to use. Daniel Reeves, same spelling, same middle initial, even the same ugly capital R I make when I write too fast. I had driven up to that campground in Northern California because my weekend opened at the last minute. I worked scheduling at a warehouse outside Sacramento, and when a Friday shift got covered without me, I decided to get out of town before anyone changed their mind. I did not want anything dramatic, no backcountry hiking, no remote survival thing. Just a quiet numbered campsite, a cheap folding chair, and 2 nights where nobody needed me to answer a phone. The campground was smaller than I expected, a single gravel loop under tall pines. Maybe 20 sites, a restroom building near the middle, a few faded trail signs. No ranger station, just a wooden self-registration box beside the entrance board. The kind with envelopes, a slot for cash yellow permit tags, and a plastic-covered logbook chained to the side so people could write down their site number. I pulled in at 4:18 p.m. I remember the time because I checked the dashboard before getting out. I was already thinking about daylight. The road in had been narrow, and I did not want to set up in the dark. Only 3 other sites looked occupied: a small trailer near the restroom, a green tent down by the creek path, an older man sitting beside a pickup with the hood up, drinking from a metal mug and staring at nothing in particular. I chose Site 14. It was close enough to the trailhead to feel useful, and far enough from the restroom that I would not hear the door slam all night. There was a picnic table, a metal fire ring, and a wooden post with an empty permit clip on it. Normal, almost boring. I parked, then walked back to the entrance box to fill out the registration before unpacking. The logbook was damp at the edges. A pine needle had gotten trapped under the plastic cover, flattened across the page like a dead insect. I lifted the cover, clicked my pen, and looked for the next blank line. That was when I saw it. Daniel Reeves, Site 14 arrived 4:32 p.m. left before dark. For a few seconds, my brain refused to turn the words into meaning. I looked at my watch, 4:18 p.m., then at the logbook again. Arrived 4:32 p.m., 14 minutes in the future. The license plate column had my plate almost right. One number was off, but not enough to make me comfortable. The handwriting leaned left the way mine does. The R in Reeves had that same broken top stroke I have never been able to fix. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because that was the first shape my body found for panic. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. A different Daniel Reeves. A prank. Some tired camper writing the wrong thing on the wrong line. Anything except what it looked like. Still, I took a picture. My hands were steady enough for the photo, but not steady enough when I put the pen down. I signed the next blank line. Daniel Reeves, Site 14 arrived 4:18 p.m. Then I stopped. The 2 signatures looked almost identical. The same name, the same slant, the same broken R. Only the last words were different. Mine did not say left before dark. Not yet. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the 2 lines. The normal thing would have been to leave. I know that now. I know most people like to believe they would see their own name written in a logbook before they arrived and immediately get back in the car. Maybe some would. I did not. At the time, it felt less like danger and more like a mistake that had picked my name by accident. A creepy mistake, sure, but still a mistake. I had been on the road for almost 4 hours. My eyes were dry. I had eaten nothing but gas station pretzels since breakfast. It was easier to believe I was tired than to believe a campground logbook had written about me 14 minutes before I got there. I clipped the yellow permit tag to my mirror and drove back to Site 14. The campsite still looked ordinary. That helped. The picnic table had dark rings from old coffee cups. The fire ring was full of gray ash and a few bottle caps someone had not bothered to pick out. Pine needles covered the tent pad in a thin orange layer. There was an old beer cap wedged under one table leg, flattened and rusted at the edges. Nothing about the site looked like it had been waiting for me. I unpacked slowly, partly because I kept checking over my shoulder. Tent first, sleeping pad, folding chair, cooler under the table. I set my flashlight and pocket knife on the bench, then moved them twice because I could not stop feeling like I had already placed them somewhere else. The permit post stood near the front of the site. When I walked over to clip the tag in place, I noticed the post already had a scrap of yellow paper caught behind the metal clip. It was small, torn at an angle, and damp enough to stick to the wood. I pulled it loose. Most of the writing had been ripped away. Only 3 letters remained. Vess. I looked at the scrap for a long time before I let myself admit what I was seeing. It could have been part of another word. It could have been leaves or drives or some last name I did not know. But the ink was blue, the same blue as the logbook. A golf cart rattled on the gravel behind me. I turned too fast and nearly dropped the paper. An older woman in a faded campground vest slowed beside my sight. Her gray hair was tucked under a sun visor, and there was a plastic water bottle rolling around on the cart floor. A handwritten name tag on her vest said Marla. "You all set up?" she asked. Her voice was normal, tired, but normal. I tried to match it. "I think so," I said. "Are you the camp host?" "Weekends, mostly." I should have stopped there. I should have asked about firewood or quiet hours. Instead, I held up the scrap of permit paper. Was someone in this site earlier today? Marla looked at the paper, then at the post. Her face changed only a little, not fear, more like recognition that arrived before she could hide it. What name did you register under? She asked. Daniel Reeves. She looked at me then, really looked, and said, you came back. I remember the way my stomach dropped. Not because she sounded threatening. She sounded confused, almost disappointed, like I had returned to a store after being warned it was closed. I just got here, I said. Marla blinked once, then gave a small laugh that did not reach her eyes. Sorry, long day. I must be mixing you up with somebody. There's another Daniel Reeves here. Could be. There are only 3 other sites occupied. She did not answer that. I told her about the logbook, not everything. Just enough to make it sound like a paperwork issue. My name on the wrong line, the wrong arrival time, the note that said left before dark. Marla's hand tightened around the steering wheel of the golf cart. That's usually the smart thing, she said. I waited for her to explain. She did not. Instead, she reached into a small clipboard basket beside her seat and handed me a fresh yellow permit tag. Use this one, she said. Sometimes old tags get left behind. I looked at the new tag. Blank, clean, ordinary. When I looked back up, Marla was already turning the cart around. Marla, I said. She stopped, but did not look at me. If I'm supposed to leave before dark, just tell me. For a second, the only sound was the cart motor clicking under her seat. Then she said I didn't say supposed to. She drove away before I could ask what that meant. I clipped the new permit tag to the post with the torn scrap still folded in my palm. The metal clip snapped shut. Behind it, pressed into the damp wood, was a faint blue stain shaped like the end of my name. I tried to make dinner after that. That sounds ridiculous, but it is true. I opened the cooler, took out a sandwich, and sat at the picnic table with my back to the permit post. I did not want to look at the yellow scrap in my hand, so I folded it twice and pushed it into the small pocket of my backpack. I told myself Marla was strange because camp hosts are strange sometimes. They live out of trailers and deal with people leaving trash in fire rings and asking where the nearest cell service is. Maybe she had mixed me up with someone. Maybe the logbook line was from a different day. Maybe the timestamp was wrong because someone wrote it carelessly. The explanations were thin, but they were still there. I held on to them. Around 5:20, I walked back toward the entrance box to get water from the spigot near the kiosk. I brought my bottle and my phone mostly because I wanted another look at the logbook. I told myself I was checking for context. Maybe there was a page before it. Maybe the other Daniel Reeves had signed somewhere else. Maybe the whole thing would make more sense if I slowed down. The logbook was still under the plastic cover. The page had curled slightly from the damp. My signature was on the lower line. The earlier one was above it. Daniel Reeves site, 14, arrived, 4:32 p.m., left before dark. Except something was different. The word before had a thin blue line through it. Not crossed out hard, not scribbled over, just one careful stroke drawn neatly through the middle of the word. Left before dark. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Then I unlocked my phone to compare it with the picture I had taken earlier. The battery was at 23%. It had been at 61 when I left the site. I remember that because I had checked it after signing the logbook. No service, but plenty of battery. I had even thought about putting it in airplane mode. Now it was almost dead. I opened the camera roll. The first logbook photo was there. So was another photo I did not take. It showed Site 14 from the trees behind it. My tent was half set up. The cooler was under the picnic table. My folding chair was still in its bag. The angle was low and partly blocked by branches, like someone had stood just inside the tree line and taken the picture through pine needles. I zoomed in. There was nobody in the photo. No Marla, no camper, no shape hiding between trees. Just my campsite seen from a place I had not walked. The timestamp on the photo was 5:47 p.m. I looked at the clock, 6:03 p.m. There are moments when your body understands something before your mind does. Mine understood then. My skin went cold, and my mouth filled with that sour taste you get right before you are sick. I had lost time. Not a lot, 35, maybe 40 minutes. Enough time to walk back to my site. Enough time to do something and forget it. Enough time for someone else to do something while I was not there. I ran back to Site 14 with the water bottle empty in my hand. The first thing I noticed was the stove. I had set a small pot of water on it earlier and never lit it. I remembered that clearly. I had been too distracted by the permit scrap to make coffee. Now the pot was sitting on the burner dry inside with a white ring of mineral residue at the bottom. The stove knob was turned off. The metal was still warm. On the picnic table, my sandwich was half-eaten. I do not mean bitten once, half-eaten. The paper wrapper had been folded back neatly, and there was mustard on the edge of the table where I must have set it down. I had no memory of eating it. I checked my hands next as if they might explain something. They were shaking badly enough that I had trouble focusing on them. There was a smear of blue ink on my right thumb. Fresh ink. Not dirt, not sap, ink. The same color as the logbook. I wiped it against my jeans, but it only spread into the fabric. That was when I heard the golf cart again, somewhere up near the entrance. I turned toward the sound, ready to call for Marla, but the sound stopped before I could speak. The campground went quiet. Then from the direction of the kiosk, a page turned, one slow paper scrape, even though there was no wind. I did not go back to the kiosk right away. That was not courage. It was the opposite. I stood beside my picnic table with blue ink smeared across my thumb, listening to the silence where that page-turning sound had come from. And I tried to decide how much fear a person is allowed to feel before they admit they are no longer in control of themselves. The sun had dropped behind the trees. The campground was not dark yet, but it had entered that uncomfortable hour where everything loses color. The picnic table looked gray. The pine needles looked black. My tent looked like someone else had put it there. I decided to pack, not leave immediately, not yet. I told myself I was being reasonable. I would pack most of the gear, keep the keys in my pocket, and if one more thing happened, I would drive out before full dark. That little condition helped me move. I rolled the sleeping pad, stuffed the extra hoodie into my duffel, put the cooler back in the trunk. I kept stopping to check my thumb as if the ink might spell something if I looked long enough. It did not. When I finally walked back toward the entrance, I carried my phone in one hand and my car keys in the other. I wanted both visible, both real. The kiosk was empty. No Marla, no golf cart, no older man by the pickup. Just the wooden box, the envelopes, the slot for cash, and the logbook under its cloudy plastic cover. The page was open. I could see my name before I lifted the cover. There were now 3 entries. Daniel Reeves' site, 14, arrived 4:32 p.m., left before dark. Daniel Reeves' site, 14, arrived 4:18 p.m. Daniel Reeves' site 14 came back after dark. The last line was written in the same blue ink. Same broken R, same left lean, but I had not written it. It was not dark yet. That was the part my mind kept grabbing onto. The line did not say I would come back after dark. It said I had. Like the logbook was not predicting anything, like it was recording a version of the evening that had already happened somewhere else. I backed away from the kiosk. A voice behind me said, "You looking for the version that left?" I turned so fast my keys slipped from my hand. The older man from the pickup stood near the restroom path with his metal mug in one hand. His truck hood was closed now. He looked embarrassed the second after he spoke, like he had said something private by mistake. "What did you say?" I asked. He looked past me at the logbook. "Nothing," he said. "Sorry, bad joke." "That wasn't a joke." He gave a small shrug. Then I guess I heard it wrong too. I wanted to ask him what that meant. I wanted to make him say something useful, but his face had closed up. He walked back toward his site without another word, moving torpidly, like someone trying not to step on a floorboard that creaks. I picked up my keys and went back to Site 14. My tent was half collapsed, not blown over, not sagging from a loose stake. Collapsed the way a person collapses a tent when they know what they are doing. 2 stakes pulled, front pole loosened, rainfly folded back over itself. My sleeping bag was rolled and strapped. I had not rolled it. I had packed the sleeping pad, the cooler, and some clothes. I had not touched the tent. I had left it standing on purpose because part of me still wanted the option of pretending I was staying. The sleeping bag was rolled better than I ever roll it. Tight, clean, the strap centered. On the picnic table, my car keys were lying on top of the folded trail map. I looked down at my right hand. Empty. The keys had been in my hand when I walked from the kiosk. I remembered dropping them there. I remembered picking them up. I remembered the teeth biting into my palm as I walked fast back through the trees. Now they were on the table. The trail map beneath them had been folded open to the campground loop. Site 14 was circled in blue ink. Twice. One circle neat, one circle shaking. I heard the golf cart then. Not close. Up by the entrance. Its little motor coughed once, then idled. Daniel Marla called. Her voice carried through the trees without echo. I stepped to the edge of my sight. I could not see her. I could not see the cart, just the entrance road bending into shadow. Daniel, she called again. I did not answer. Then she said louder this time, "Don't sign it again." My hand moved before I understood why. I looked down. There was a pen in my left hand. Blue ink. I had no memory of picking it up. I dropped the pen. It hit the dirt beside my shoe and rolled under the picnic table. I did not pick it up. That was the moment I stopped trying to make the campground make sense. I did not care about the logbook anymore. I did not care whether Marla was real or confused or trying to help me. I did not care which version of me had packed the sleeping bag better than I ever could. I only cared about leaving before my hand found another blank line. I shoved everything into the trunk. Tent half folded, poles loose, cooler on its side, chair still damp with evening air. I left the stove on the picnic table because I could not remember whether I had turned it off once or twice, and I was afraid that touching it would prove something else had already happened. The keys stayed in my fist the whole time. I squeezed them so hard that the teeth cut into my palm. When I backed out of Site 14, the sky had gone the color of old metal. Not full dark yet. Close enough. The restroom light had come on yellow and weak through the trees. Somewhere near the entrance I heard the golf cart again, but I never saw it. The kiosk stood beside the road as I drove past. The logbook was still open under the plastic cover. For 1 second my headlights crossed the page. I saw my name, more than once. Then I was past it. I did not stop until the campground road met the county highway, and my phone found service again. The signal bars appeared one by one, and for some reason that made me feel worse. Like the normal world had finally noticed me and was pretending nothing had happened. My camera roll opened by itself. I know how that sounds. The phone was in the cup holder. I was not touching it. The screen lit up unlocked and showed the photo I had taken of the logbook when I first arrived. I pulled onto the shoulder. In the photo, the top line still said, Daniel Reeves, Site 14, arrived 4:32 p.m., left before dark. My own line was underneath it. Nothing else. No third entry. No, came back after dark. No warning. No proof that anything after 4:18 had happened the way I remembered it. I almost cried from relief. Then I got home. The next morning I called the ranger office that managed that campground. I kept my voice calm. I asked if there was a weekend host named Marla. The woman on the phone paused, then said they had not assigned a host there that season. Too few bookings. Self-registration only. I thanked her and hung up. Then I checked the photo again. The line had changed. The first entry no longer said left before dark. It said came back after dark. The words were small but clear, written in the same blue ink with the same broken R in Reeves above them. I zoomed in until the letters blurred. Near the right edge of the page, almost cut off by the plastic cover, there was one more word I had not seen before. Again. I deleted the photo. Then I deleted it from recently deleted. For 3 days that was enough. On the 4th morning it came back. Same photo, same timestamp, 4:32 p.m. The time the logbook said I had arrived. The time I was still driving up the mountain road 14 minutes away from the campground entrance. I do not have a clean ending for this. I never learned who wrote my name first. I never learned whether Marla was warning me or remembering me. I never learned Which version of me left before dark, or which one came back after it? But I still think about that logbook. I think about the damp page under the plastic cover. I think about all those blank lines waiting for names. And I still do not know whether it was wrong about me, or whether it was the only thing there keeping track correctly. We were only supposed to be gone for 40 minutes. That was the line I kept repeating later when people asked why we did not turn around sooner. 40 minutes, maybe an hour if we stopped at the overlook and took pictures. It was not supposed to be a hike that needed planning. It was barely supposed to count as a hike at all. My brother Mark and I were camping near the Great Smoky Mountains at a campground with paved restroom paths, numbered sites, and little signs reminding people not to leave food out for bears. It was not deep wilderness. There were kids riding bikes around the loop road. Someone had a Bluetooth speaker playing country music 2 sites down. You could smell charcoal and hot dogs from almost anywhere in the campground. The trail started behind the restroom building. That was part of why it felt so harmless. There was a wooden sign at the trailhead with a map stapled behind cloudy plastic. The overlook was marked as 1.8 miles. Not a long route, not technical. A thin brown line through the trees, then a view, then back to camp before dinner. We left at 3:10 p.m. I checked the time because I had steaks in the cooler and wanted the fire going before dark. Mark made fun of me for that. He said I had become the kind of guy who scheduled relaxation. He was probably right. The first 10 minutes were normal. The trail climbed a little, then flattened. Dry leaves cracked under our shoes. The air smelled damp and green, the way those mountains always do, like everything is slowly rotting and growing at the same time. We passed the first marker near a bend in the trail, 0.4 miles from Campground. It was a short wooden post with the numbers burned into a small square plate. Someone had carved a tiny V into the edge of the post just below the plate. There was also a piece of blue candy wrapper jammed into a crack in the wood. Mark stopped and tapped the V with one finger. Secret cult trail, he said, or bored teenagers. Same thing. We kept walking. I remember feeling good then. Not happy exactly, but loose. Away from work. Away from traffic. Away from my phone, which had already dropped to 1 bar under the trees. The trail rose again. We crossed a patch of mud, stepped over a fallen branch, and followed a long curve around a slope where the trees thinned just enough to show a pale piece of sky. After 20 or 25 minutes, I expected to see the overlook sign soon. Instead, we reached another marker. Same height, same burned plate. 0.4 miles from Campground. I stopped before Mark did. For a second, I told myself trail markers just looked alike. Parks probably ordered them in batches. Same wood, same plate, same black numbers. Then Mark stepped closer and said, "No way." Below the plate at the edge of the post was the same tiny V, in the same place. And in the crack under it, folded into the wood, like someone had put it there with tweezers, was the same piece of blue wrapper. Mark looked at me. "That's the same post." I shook my head too quickly. "No, it isn't." But I had already seen the mud at the base. It had dried in the shape of a boot print. Mark wanted to turn around immediately. I did not blame him, but I also did not want to admit we were already lost on a trail that started behind a restroom building. There is a special kind of embarrassment that comes with being scared in a place designed for families and day hikers. So I took out the folded campground map. The trail line was simple. It left the campground, climbed toward the overlook, and ended there. No loop, no split, no second marker shown anywhere near the section we were on. "We probably missed a turn," I said. Mark looked at the map, then at the trail behind us. There was no turn. There might have been. You always do that. Do what? Try to make the dumb explanation sound like the smart one. I wanted to argue, but he was not wrong. My phone GPS was no help. 1 second it showed us a little blue dot just off the campground loop. The next second it spun in place, then jumped into a blank gray patch with no trail at all. Under the trees, that was not unusual. I told myself that several times. Mark took out his pocket knife. Before I could ask what he was doing, he carved a short line under the little V on the marker. "There," he said. "If we see it again, we're done pretending." It was a clean mark. Fresh wood showed pale under the bark. No mistaking it. We kept going. For the next 15 minutes, the trail climbed in a way that made no sense if we were circling. We passed a fallen branch I did not remember. We crossed a shallow rut filled with wet leaves. The ground got rockier. I could hear Mark breathing harder behind me. I started to feel better. That was the cruel part. The trail felt like it was finally becoming a trail again. A normal one that went somewhere. Then it appeared ahead of us, the marker. 0.4 miles from Campground. Mark stopped dead. I walked closer because my brain still needed the extra step. I needed to see the details before I let fear have the room. The V was there. The blue wrapper was there. And beneath the V was the fresh cut Mark had made with his knife. Still pale, still clean. Mark let out a small laugh with no humor in it. "Nope," he said, "we're going back." I agreed. That is important. I did not push forward. I did not tell him we were almost there. I did not act brave. We turned around and started walking back the way we had come. At first, that made me feel better too. Going back has a way of feeling like control. We moved fast, almost too fast for the slope. The trail should have carried us downhill toward the campground. We should have heard kids or cars or somebody's campsite radio. Instead, after maybe 10 minutes, I saw a square wooden plate ahead. I stopped walking. Mark bumped into my shoulder. The marker stood in front of us, not behind us, in front. 0.4 miles from Campground. Same V. Same knife mark. Same wrapper. Mark whispered something I could not make out. I checked the time on my phone. 3:48 p.m. Mark checked his. His face went flat. What I asked. He turned the screen toward me. 4:31 p.m. For a few seconds, both phones sat between us in the quiet woods, showing two different afternoons. Mark kept looking from his phone to mine, like one of them might apologize. I wish I could say I stayed calm because I was older. I did not. I just got quiet. That is what fear does to me when it gets too big. It takes the words first. "Your phone's wrong," I said. Mark stared at me. "You know that's not the problem." I did know, but knowing something and saying it out loud are different things. We decided to mark the place again, not with the knife this time. I took a water bottle from the side pocket of my backpack and set it on the left side of the post, tight against the base. I turned the cap toward the trail so we would know if it moved. "Left side," I said. "Cap facing us," Mark said. We both repeated it like that made it official. Then we left the trail marker and followed the slope downhill. Not the trail exactly, just downhill. I could hear water somewhere ahead, a faint creek sound that made me think of the campground map. There was a little stream behind the lower loop. If we reached that, we could follow it back. For maybe 5 minutes, the plan worked. The ground dropped, the air got cooler, the creek sound grew clearer. Mark even said he could smell smoke like campfires. Then the creek stopped. Not faded, stopped. 1 second it was ahead of us. The next, there was only wind and leaves. I turned and the marker was there. 0.4 miles from Campground. Same burned plate, same V, same knife cut, same blue wrapper, and the water bottle was still at the base. But it was on the right side. The cap was off. Half the water was gone. Mark whispered, "Someone's moving it." I wanted that to be true so badly that for a second I almost believed it. A person could move a bottle. A person could mess with us. A person could be followed, hit reported, understood. So I crouched and checked the dirt around the post. There were footprints, mine and Mark's. I knew mine because my left boot had a worn outside heel. I knew Mark's because he had those deep zigzag soles from his new hiking shoes. There were no third prints, but there was something worse. My own boot prints circled the marker, not once, several times. A slow ring around the post overlapping in places like I had walked around it again and again while Mark stood somewhere else. I had no memory of doing that. Mark saw them too. "Why did you walk around it like that?" he asked. I didn't. He looked at me, and for the first time that afternoon, I saw he was not just scared of the trail. He was scared of me. I stood up too fast and almost slipped. My hand went into my jacket pocket for my phone, but my fingers touched something thin and plastic. I pulled it out, a piece of blue candy wrapper, folded once, damp at the edge. I looked at the marker. The wrapper was still jammed in the crack under the V. Same color, same torn corner. Mark backed away from me. I wanted to tell him I had not taken it. I wanted to say the wrapper must have fallen into my pocket earlier, or there had been two pieces or anything that could make his face change back. But I could not say it, because I did not remember putting anything in my pocket. And in the mud around the marker, one of my boot prints pointed away from the trail, straight into the trees. I made the decision because Mark was looking at me like I might not be Mark's brother anymore. That scared me more than the marker. "We're leaving the trail," I said. Mark shook his head at once. "That's how people get lost. We are lost on the trail." He did not have an answer for that. I pointed toward the trees where my boot print faced away from the post. I hated the idea of following it. I hated that it felt like something had already made the choice for me. But the trail had stopped behaving like a trail, and staying on it felt worse than breaking the rule every hiking sign tells you to follow. We moved through the brush instead. Slowly at first, then faster. Branches scraped our arms. Dry leaves slid under our shoes. Mark stayed close enough behind me that I could hear him breathing through his teeth. Neither of us talked. Every few steps I expected to see the marker again between the trees. We did not. After maybe 12 minutes, I heard a door slam. A real one. Then a child laughing. Then a dog barking from somewhere down the slope. I pushed through a line of rhododendron and almost stepped onto the paved restroom path behind the campground. The building was right there. Same yellow walls. Same buzzing light over the men's room door. Same trash cans chained near the water fountain. The campground was maybe 50 yards away. Mark came out behind me and bent over with his hands on his knees. I checked my phone. 4:02 p.m. Mark checked his. 5:17 p.m. A man walking back from the restroom with a towel over his shoulder saw us staring at our phones and smiled. "You boys lose the trail already?" he asked. I tried to laugh. "What time do you have?" I asked. He looked at his watch. 3:56. Mark closed his eyes. We did not explain. We did not go back to look for the marker. We walked straight to our campsite and packed everything we could reach. Before we left, I looked once toward the trailhead. The first post stood just beyond the restroom building, 0.4 miles from Campground. There was a tiny V, Bad Karsten Man Manisi carved under the plate. A susu. The blue wrapper was still wedged in the crack. Mark saw it too, but neither of us said anything. On the drive out, I reached into my backpack for a bottle of water. My hand closed around plastic. I pulled it out and almost drove off the road. It was the same bottle I had set beside the marker. Half empty, cap loose, dried mud smeared around the bottom in the shape of a boot print. The part I still can't explain is that I never put that bottle back in my bag, but something did. The first thing I noticed was that our cooler had already been locked. Not closed, locked. The bungee cord was stretched across the lid and hooked through both handles the way I always secured it before loading it into the back of the SUV. I had a specific way of doing it because the lid had popped open once on a trip years earlier and dumped melted ice all over the cargo mat. I knew that cord had not been on the cooler when we went to sleep. We were camping at a state park campground in Michigan, the kind of place that was almost too normal to feel scary. Numbered sites, paved loop road, bathhouse near the middle, raccoon-proof trash bins by the water spigot, families with bikes leaning against picnic tables, RV awnings, wet towels over clotheslines. It was me, my wife Lauren, and our 6-year-old daughter Emily. We had Site 23 close to the bathhouse, but not close enough to smell it. Lauren liked that. Emily liked that she could see the playground through the trees if she stood on the picnic table bench, which we told her not to do at least 10 times. The first night was fine until the rain started. Not a storm, just steady rain, the kind that makes every campground sound smaller. We pulled the cooler under the tarp, shoved the folding chairs against the picnic table, and got into the tent earlier than planned. Emily fell asleep between us with one hand still wrapped around her little flashlight. I remember lying there listening to water tick against the rainfly, thinking I would have to pack everything wet in the morning. I woke up at 5:38 a.m. I checked my phone because the tent was gray but not bright yet. Lauren was still asleep beside me. Emily was curled against her mouth, open flashlight tucked under one arm like a stuffed animal. Then I heard the tarp drip outside. I unzipped the tent just enough to look out. The cooler was no longer under the tarp. It had been dragged beside the SUV and locked with the bungee cord. For a few seconds, I just stared at it, irritated more than scared. My first thought was that Lauren had woken up before me and started packing. Then I looked back at her. She was asleep. The folding chairs were next to the trunk, collapsed and standing upright against the bumper. The unused firewood was bundled with the orange strap we kept in the kitchen bin. The camp stove had been wiped dry and set on top of the plastic storage tote. Everything looked like the first 10 minutes of checkout, except none of us had checked out. I stepped outside barefoot and immediately regretted it. The ground was cold and muddy. My socks got wet before I reached the picnic table. I kept telling myself I must have done some of it the night before and forgotten because of the rain, but I would not have locked the cooler. Not while it was still under the tarp. Not before breakfast. On the picnic table, weighted down by Emily's flashlight, was a wet receipt. I picked it up carefully. Most of the ink had blurred from the rain, but the top line was still readable. Site 23. My last name, and near the bottom, in dark black print. Checkout 6:12 a.m. I checked my phone again. 5:38 a.m. Behind me, Lauren shifted inside the tent and mumbled my name. I did not answer right away. I was looking at the receipt, trying to understand how we had checked out 34 minutes in the future. Lauren woke up because I kept standing there in the rain with the tent door open. "What are you doing?" she whispered, already annoyed. I handed her the receipt instead of answering. She blinked at it for a few seconds, still half asleep, then sat up. Her hair was stuck to one side of her face, and for some reason that tiny normal detail made everything feel worse. I wanted her to tell me I was reading it wrong. I wanted her to say she had gone out earlier, packed the cooler, locked the bungee cord, and printed a receipt from somewhere I had forgotten existed. Instead, she looked at her phone. 5:41 a.m. Then she looked at the receipt again. "Maybe it blew over from another site," she said. "It has our site number. Then maybe it's from the people before us." With my last name, she did not answer right away. That was when Emily stirred between us. She made a small, unhappy sound and pulled the flashlight closer to her chest. Lauren immediately lowered her voice. "Don't scare her," she said. "I'm not trying to." "I know, just don't." That was Lauren. Practical first, fear later if there was time. Emily opened her eyes and looked at both of us like she had walked into the middle of a conversation she already understood. "Are we going back again?" she asked. Lauren softened her voice. "Back where, baby? Home." I glanced at Lauren. Emily sat up slowly, still holding the flashlight. We already drove home. Lauren reached over and brushed hair out of Emily's face. "You had a dream." Emily shook her head with the stubborn certainty only a half-awake child can have. "No, we were in the car. Mommy was in the front. Daddy was mad because the tent was wet. And then we stopped where the Slurpee machine was broken. I felt something cold move under my ribs. There was a gas station outside the park entrance. We had stopped there the day before. Emily had asked for a blue raspberry Slurpee, and the machine had a handwritten out of order sign taped to it. Lauren and I had laughed because Emily looked personally betrayed. We had not mentioned it since. Lauren went very still. "What else happened?" I asked. She shot me a look, but Emily answered before Lauren could stop her. "You forgot the flashlight." She pointed toward the picnic table. I turned. Emily's small purple flashlight was sitting on the wet tabletop beside the receipt. I looked back at her hands. She was holding the same flashlight, same purple plastic, same sticker peeling off the handle, same little crack near the button from when she dropped it on the driveway last spring. Lauren saw it too. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Then Emily said quieter, but the other tent was dry. Lauren climbed out of the sleeping bag and put herself between Emily and the tent door, like the rain outside had become something with a face. "Brian," she said softly, "step outside." I did. She followed me barefoot in the mud and zipped the tent behind her so Emily could not see our faces. "Don't react in front of her," Lauren whispered. "I'm trying not to. Try harder." I wanted to get defensive. I almost did. But then I looked past her at the SUV. The booster seat was visible through the rear window. Empty. The car was off. No lights, no engine, no one inside. Then the seatbelt warning chimed once. Just once. A small, polite sound from inside the locked SUV. Lauren turned toward it. Her hand found mine, and for the first time that morning, she squeezed hard enough to hurt. I unlocked the SUV with the key fob. Nothing happened at first. No alarm, no lights flashing in some dramatic way. Just the soft click of the doors unlocking, the same sound I had heard 1,000 times in grocery store parking lots and school pickup lines. That almost helped. Then I opened the rear passenger door. Emily's booster seat was buckled, not empty with the belt hanging loose. Buckled. The shoulder belt was pulled across the seat and clicked into place tight enough that it pressed into the fabric where Emily's chest would have been. Emily was still in the tent. Lauren stood behind me with her arms folded tight against the cold. "Did you do that?" she asked. "Number." I hated how quickly I answered because it sounded defensive, but I had not done it. I had taken Emily out of that seat the evening before, carried her half asleep to the picnic table, and watched her eat crackers while Lauren set up the sleeping bags. There was dried mud on the floor mat under the booster. Small flakes, not a lot. Just enough to look like someone had climbed in with wet shoes, then sat there long enough for the mud to fall off. I closed the door slowly. Lauren had already gone to the trunk. When she lifted the hatch, we both just stood there. Half our gear was inside. The camp stove, the lantern, the kitchen bin, the bag of paper plates, one wet towel folded over the cooler handle. All of it was arranged the way I usually packed it. Heavy things, low, soft things wedged around them so they would not slide. But the rest of our gear was still at the campsite. The tent was still up. The sleeping bags were still inside. Emily's rain jacket was hanging from a branch near the tarp. The chairs were outside the trunk folded and waiting like someone had been interrupted halfway through loading them. It looked like checkout had started in 2 places at once. Lauren whispered, "We're leaving." I nodded, but I was already reaching for my phone. That was a mistake. I had a dash cam app connected to the SUV, mostly for insurance. It saved short motion clips whenever the vehicle moved or shook. I opened it because I wanted proof that someone else had opened the car. A raccoon, a person, a glitch. Anything that lived in the same world we did. There was one new clip, 6:12 a.m. My thumb hovered over it. Lauren saw the timestamp and said, "Don't." But I pressed play. The video showed the campground loop through the windshield. Rain streaked the glass. The wipers moved once slowly. The SUV was rolling past the bathhouse. Lauren was in the passenger seat. Emily was asleep in the back, and I was driving. Not someone who looked like me. Me. Same gray hoodie, same wedding ring, same small cut on my thumb from splitting kindling the night before. The clip had audio. Lauren's voice said, "We forgot the tent." Then my voice answered, calm and tired, "No, we didn't. It's already home." The clip ended. For a second, the only sound was rain tapping on the hatch above us. I looked across the campground toward the bathhouse. The yellow light over the door flickered once. The same flicker from the clip. Lauren grabbed the phone out of my hand and turned the screen off. "We are taking Emily," she said. "Wallets, keys, phones, nothing else." I did not argue. When I turned back toward the tent, Emily was standing in the doorway with the zipper open around her knees. She was holding the purple flashlight. Both purple flashlights were gone from the picnic table now. Emily looked at me, then at Lauren. "This is the part where you get mad," she said. I did not get mad. That is one of the few things I am grateful for. I wanted to. Not at Emily. Not really. But fear looks for somewhere to go, and for half a second it tried to come out as anger. At the rain. At the car. at myself for opening the video, at Lauren for being right when she told me not to. Instead, I picked Emily up and carried her to the SUV. Her pajamas were damp at the cuffs. She held the purple flashlight against my shoulder and did not ask for her stuffed rabbit, which was still somewhere inside the tent. Lauren noticed that too. I saw her look back once, then force herself to keep walking. We left almost everything. The tent stayed up. The sleeping bag stayed inside. The chair stayed beside the trunk. The cooler was locked, but I did not load it. I did not trust anything that had already been packed for us. Lauren got into the passenger seat without speaking. I buckled Emily into the booster myself. This time I watched the belt click. I pulled it once to make sure it was real. Emily looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Now the tent gets left." I shut the door before I answered because I had nothing useful to say. We drove out of Site 23 slowly. When we passed the bathhouse, the yellow light over the door flickered once. Lauren made a sound like she had been holding her breath too long. I kept driving. The dash cam did not record that part. Later, when I checked, there was no file, no motion event, no loop footage, nothing between 5:58 and 6:24, even though the SUV was moving and the camera had power. By the time we reached the highway, Emily was asleep again. We drove home in almost complete silence. We did not stop at the gas station with the broken Slurpee machine. We did not stop anywhere. When I opened our garage, I saw the second set of camping gear before I turned off the engine. It was lined up along the wall where I always put it after a trip. Dry tent bag, clean folding chairs, empty cooler, kitchen bin with the blue lid snapped shut. Everything was arranged neatly, like someone had unpacked the trip already. Lauren got out first and stood in the garage doorway with one hand over her mouth. The wet gear was still in our SUV. The dry gear was already home. I walked to the tent bag because some stupid part of me needed to prove it was not ours, but it was. Same brand, same tear near the handle, same strip of duct tape I had put on it after a pole poked through the fabric the summer before. I unzipped it. Inside was Emily's purple flashlight. The one she had been holding in the car was still on the back seat. This one was muddy. The light was on, but weak yellowing as the battery died. A piece of wet paper was stuck to the handle. I peeled it off carefully. Most of the ink had run. Only one line near the bottom stayed dark enough to read. Checkout completed. I still have that flashlight. Not because I want to, because every time I try to throw it away, Emily asks why I'm getting rid of the one we brought home first. I woke up at 6 exactly. The problem was I had already been awake. I know that sounds like something a person says when they are trying to make a normal morning seem strange. It was not like that. I did not wake up groggy and realize I had made coffee on autopilot. I did not forget getting dressed for a few minutes. I woke up inside my tent with the alarm still ringing, and the whole campsite looked like I had already started my day without being there for it. I had gone camping alone in Colorado because I was tired of hearing my apartment. That is the honest reason. My divorce had been final for 3 months, and everyone kept telling me to get out, clear my head, do something simple. So I picked a small campground near a fishing lake where I had stayed once years earlier. It was quiet, nothing fancy. A few sites tucked between pines, a pit toilet near the entrance, a short trail down to a wooden dock, and enough distance from town that my phone only worked if I stood near the road. I got there on a Friday afternoon. I set up my tent at Site 7, ate soup from a can, sat by a small fire until I got tired of pretending I was enjoying the silence. Before bed, I recorded a voice memo because that had become a habit after the divorce. My therapist had suggested journaling. Talking into my phone felt less embarrassing. I said something boring. I remember that. The weather was cold. The lake looked nice. I was going to wake up early and fish before anyone else got there. Then I set my alarm for 6 a.m. When it went off, I opened my eyes and smelled coffee. Not old coffee, fresh coffee. That bitter hot smell that fills a campsite when the air is still cold enough to hold it close to the ground. For a few seconds I thought someone nearby had started brewing. Then I turned my head and saw my own metal mug sitting just inside the tent vestibule. It was full, steam lifted from it in thin white lines. The camp stove was beside it, but the burner was cold. I reached out and touched the metal with 2 fingers. No heat, no hiss from the fuel canister, nothing that explained fresh coffee. My boots were outside the tent door. They were muddy. I had cleaned them before bed because I hate dragging grit into the tent. Now both boots were placed neatly side by side, toes facing the lake trail, with wet brown mud packed into the treads. My left hand stung when I sat up. There was a scratch across the back of it, thin fresh, with a little blood dried at one end. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for the memory to arrive. It did not. The alarm was still ringing. I picked up the phone to turn it off. 6 a.m. Then I saw the new recording in my voice memo app. It had been made at 5:14 a.m. The file was 11 seconds long. I did not press play right away. I just sat there, in the gray morning light, smelling coffee I did not remember making, staring at boots I did not remember wearing, and listening to the alarm repeat the same soft tone, like it was trying to wake up someone who had already left. I did what people do when they are scared of their own mind. I explained it away. Sleepwalking was the first explanation. It was ugly, but it was possible. I had not been sleeping well since the divorce. Some nights I woke up on the couch with the TV still on, and no memory of moving there from the bed. Once I found my car keys in the freezer and laughed about it, because laughing felt better than admitting how tired I was. So I told myself I had sleepwalked. I had gotten up at 5:14, made coffee, walked around, scratched my hand, and gone back to bed. That was all. Embarrassing, but not impossible. I still did not play the voice memo. Not yet. Instead, I checked the campsite like evidence could make the explanation kinder. The fire ring was cold. The cooler was closed. The coffee grounds were in the trash bag beside the picnic table, wet and fresh, like I had emptied the filter only minutes earlier. My small folding chair had been moved closer to the trail facing the lake. That bothered me more than it should have. Outside the tent, my footprints were easy to see in the damp dirt. They started at the tent door. My boots, my tread, no question. They went past the fire ring around the picnic table and down the narrow path toward the lake. There were return prints too, but only in some places. A few stretches had prints going out with nothing beside them coming back. Other stretches had return prints with no outgoing ones. It looked less like a walk and more like someone had edited parts of the ground. I followed them anyway. That was a bad choice maybe. But at that point, the trail led to an open lake in daylight, not a dark mine shaft. I had my phone. I had a pocket knife. Other campers were somewhere behind me. And if I had sleepwalked down there, I needed to know how far I had gone. The path was short, pines on both sides, wet grass brushing my shins, the lake showing through the trees in flat silver pieces. The wooden dock came into view after 2 minutes. Mud was smeared across the first few boards. My mud. I crouched and matched the pattern to my boot. Same worn spot near the right heel, same missing chunk in the left sole where I had stepped on a nail years ago. At the end of the dock, the railing had 3 fresh scratches in the wood, short, parallel, deep enough to leave pale lines. I touched them with my thumb and felt my stomach turn. The scratch on my hand lined up with them almost perfectly, like I had grabbed the rail hard and slid. The lake was still, too still for how cold the morning was. Then a circle of ripples opened near the dock. Not far out, just below where I was standing. I backed away before I knew I had decided to. By the time I got back to the campsite, I was breathing too hard for such a short walk. I told myself it was panic. I told myself the ripples could have been a fish. I told myself everything still fit inside sleepwalking if I did not look too closely. Then I saw the mug. It was still inside the tent vestibule exactly where I had left it. Steam was rising from it, thin and white. The coffee was still hot. I finally played the voice memo. Not because I was ready. I was not. I played it because the coffee was still hot, and that destroyed the last simple explanation I had. The file was only 11 seconds long. At first there was breathing. Mine, I think, close to the microphone. Uneven, like I had been walking too fast or trying not to make noise. Then came water. Not waves, not wind, just a soft, steady slap against wood. The dock. For a second, I almost stopped the recording. I remember my thumb hovering over the screen. I remember thinking that if I did not hear the rest, maybe I could still drive home and pretend stress had done something ugly to my memory. Then my own voice whispered, "Don't trust the second morning." The file ended. I sat there with the phone in my hand until the screen dimmed. Second morning. I had no idea what that meant. I wanted to leave then. I really did. But there was one thing I needed before I could make myself move. Proof that I had been awake. Proof that this was sleepwalking or not sleepwalking. Something outside my head. That was when I remembered the trail camera. I had seen it the day before strapped to a pine about halfway between the campsites and the lake. I assumed it belonged to a ranger or maybe a hunter who forgot to take it down. It faced the narrow path angled low enough to catch deer. I walked to it with my keys in my fist. The little screen on the back was cracked but working. I should not have touched it. I know that. But panic makes rules feel less important than answers. There was a clip from 5:14 a.m. I pressed play. The video was gray and grainy. The timestamp sat in the lower corner. For 3 seconds, nothing moved except branches. Then I walked into frame. Me. Same hoodie, same boots, same scratch on my left hand, though in the video it looked fresh and wet. I carried the metal mug in one hand. My face was wrong. Not changed, not possessed, nothing dramatic like that. Just empty. I stopped directly in front of the camera. For a moment, I stared into the lens like I knew exactly where it was. Then the version of me in the video said very clearly, "I'm not doing this again." After that, I turned toward the lake and walked out of frame. The clip ended there. I watched it 3 times. Each time I hoped I had misheard it. Each time the words stayed the same. "I'm not doing this again." I took the SD card out, then put it back in because taking it felt insane. Then I took a photo of the screen with my phone because leaving without proof felt worse. When I got back to my campsite, the mug was gone. The muddy boots were clean. The coffee smell was gone too. For one hopeful second, I thought maybe whatever had been happening was over. Then my phone alarm went off. Same soft tone, same screen, 6 a.m. I stood there in the middle of the campsite holding the phone as it rang in my hand. I had already turned that alarm off. I know I had. But the screen kept glowing. 6 a.m. And from inside the tent where the mug had been earlier, I heard my own voice whisper from the phone speaker. "You waited too long last time." I stopped trusting the phone after that. I shoved it into my jacket pocket while the alarm was still ringing. The sound became muffled against the fabric, but it did not stop. It just kept pulsing there against my ribs, soft and patient, like it had all morning to wait me out. I packed without thinking. Sleeping bag, stove, fuel canister, jacket, half the food from the cooler. I did not roll anything right. I did not check the site for trash. I did not care about leaving the place clean. The only thing I cared about was getting my keys in my hand and my body into the car before another version of me made a decision I could not remember. The alarm stopped as soon as I opened the driver's door. That should have made me feel better. It did not. An older camper from the next site over was standing beside his truck with a toothbrush in his mouth, watching me throw gear into my back seat. He was wearing a flannel robe and rubber sandals, which somehow made the whole thing feel more humiliating. Like I was not escaping. Like I was just a man having a breakdown in front of someone's morning coffee. "You all right?" he asked. "Mercedes," he had asked. I almost told him everything. The coffee, the footprints, the video, my own voice saying things I did not understand. But I heard how it would sound before I said it. So I just asked, "What time do you have?" He looked confused, then checked his watch. 7:22. I looked at the dashboard. 6 a.m. I pulled my phone out. 6 a.m. The old man looked at his watch again, then looked toward the lake. His expression changed a little, not enough to mean anything on its own, but enough that I noticed. "Your clock's stuck," he asked. "I think so." He nodded slowly. Then I'd stop asking it. That was all he said. I got into the driver's seat and my back hit something cold. I jumped forward. The seat fabric was wet, not damp from morning air. Wet. A long dark patch ran down the backrest exactly where a soaked hoodie would have pressed into it. The smell hit me next. Lake water, mud, that sour plant smell from the edge of a dock. I touched the seat with 2 fingers. Cold water soaked into my skin. I had not sat there that morning. I was sure of that, but someone in my clothes had. The phone buzzed in my hand. A new voice memo had appeared. 6 a.m. I did not want to play it. I really did not. I had the keys. The engine was running. The road out was clear. I could have thrown the phone out the window and driven until the clock fixed itself. Instead, I pressed play. There was no breathing this time. No water. Just my voice close to the microphone, quiet and tired. "You waited too long last time." Then a pause. And then softer. "Don't go to the dock after the second alarm." The file ended. I looked through the windshield toward the lake trail. For 1 second, I saw myself standing between the trees. Not clearly, not like a person posing there, more like a shape my mind made out of hoodie gray and morning shadow. Then the old camper shut his truck door and the shape was gone. I reversed so fast the back tire dropped off the gravel pad. The dashboard still said 6 a.m. I drove anyway. The clock did not change until I reached the highway. For the first 10 minutes, every screen I had stayed at 6 a.m. The dashboard, my phone, even the small clock on the gas station sign near the county road, though I only saw it for a second as I passed. 6 exactly, like the morning had been pinned there, and everything else had to move around it. Then my phone found service. The time jumped to 7:31 a.m. I almost pulled over from relief. That is embarrassing to admit, but it felt like getting air after being underwater. The road looked like a road again. Trucks passed in the opposite lane. A woman in a Subaru had a coffee cup on her roof and did not notice. Normal things happened around me, and none of them seemed to care that I had just driven out of a morning that kept restarting. I did not stop until I was almost home. I told myself I had been under stress. I told myself grief does strange things to sleep. I told myself the wet seat could have come from my jacket even though my jacket was dry. I told myself the voice memos were files I had recorded in some half-awake state. By the time I got back to my apartment, I had almost made it sound possible. Almost. I deleted the voice memos before I carried my bags upstairs. All of them. The one from 5:14. The one from 6 o'clock. The boring one I had recorded before bed. I deleted them, then cleared them from recently deleted because I did not want to wake up at 3 in the morning and listen again. For 3 days, nothing happened. I went to work. I answered emails. I washed the mud out of my boots in the bathtub. I put the camping gear in the storage closet and left the tent rolled too loose because I could not stand touching it longer than necessary. On the 4th morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. to the smell of coffee. I do not own a programmable coffee maker. I have a cheap single cup machine with one button. You put the mug under it, press down, and it makes coffee. That is it. It was running when I walked into the kitchen. The little light was on. Hot coffee dripped into my camping mug. The same metal mug I had left at the campground. I know I left it there. I remember seeing it in the tent vestibule before I drove away. I remember deciding not to touch it. I remember telling myself mugs were replaceable. I unplugged the machine from the wall. It kept dripping for 2 more seconds, then stopped. The mug was warm when I picked it up. Inside, mixed with the coffee, was wet sand. Not grounds, sand. The kind from the muddy edge of the lake. I poured it into the sink and stood there until my legs felt weak. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. One new voice memo. 5:14 a.m. I did not touch it for almost an hour. When I finally played it, the first part was the same. Breathing, water against wood, my voice whispering, "Don't trust the second morning." But this time, after a long pause, there was another voice. Still mine? Farther away. You already did. I still wake up before my alarm now. Not because I want to, because I'm afraid of finding out I already got up. The reservation said we checked in the day before we arrived. At first I thought it was a date error. That was the explanation my mind reached for because it was boring, and boring explanations are easier to stand next to in the dark. Campground software glitch. Staff printed the wrong sleeve. Some seasonal worker clicked the wrong day. Something ordinary and fixable. We got to the campground at 8:46 p.m. I remember because Allison was angry at me for saying we still had plenty of daylight when we left home. Then traffic outside Tacoma stalled for almost an hour. Then we stopped for gas. Then the gravel road into the forest was longer than the website made it sound, with potholes deep enough to make the tire pressure light flicker on and off. By the time we reached the office, everything was closed. It was a small campground in Washington State. The kind that looked half-maintained but still official. Wooden office, dark windows, a self-check-in board under the porch roof, numbered reservation sleeves clipped behind cloudy plastic, one weak yellow bulb over the bulletin board, throwing just enough light to make the trees beyond it look black. Allison stayed near the car while I walked to the board. "We can still leave," she said. I pretended not to hear how much she meant it. "We're already here," I said. That is one of those sentences people say right before they make a bad decision, sound practical. Our sleeve was easy to find. Carter/Reed, Site 12. Nate Carter, Allison Reed. Correct names, correct site, correct confirmation number. But under that in block print it said, checked in 4:38 p.m. yesterday. I stared at it for a few seconds, then checked the email on my phone. The booking was for tonight, not yesterday. Tonight. I even had the receipt from the gas station in my jacket pocket still warm from my hand, proving we had only been on the road a few hours. Allison came up behind me. What she asked. I pointed. She leaned close to the sleeve, then looked back toward the dark office window. They printed the wrong date. That's what I'm thinking. But my voice did not sound convinced, and she noticed. Inside the sleeve was the yellow permit tag for Site 12. The top corner had already been torn off along the perforation the way you tear it after hanging the tag on the post. It was not clean either. The paper was soft at the edge like it had been damp and dried again. I pulled it out. Behind the permit was a second sheet. At first I thought it was campground rules, quiet hours, firewood policy, bear safety, normal stuff. It was a checkout checklist. Vehicle registered, checked. Fire ring cleared, checked. Trash removed, checked. Quiet hours acknowledged, checked. Site condition accepted, checked. At the bottom, one line had been stamped in faded red ink. Checkout preparation completed. Allison read it over my shoulder. "Nate," she said very quietly. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. "Someone messed up the sleeve." "Then why is your signature on it?" I looked down again. At the bottom of the check-in section below our printed names was a signature. Mine. Not close to mine, not a scribble that could have belonged to anyone. Mine, the quick N, the too large C in Carter. The lazy line I always dragged through the end because I hated signing forms. I had not signed anything. I looked back at our car. The rear tire pressure light glowed faintly on the dashboard through the windshield. The road behind us was dark. No signal on my phone, no staff in the office, no other campers visible from where we stood. Allison folded her arms tight across her chest. "We are not sleeping here," she said. "I know." But I was still holding the permit tag, and on the back, written in blue ink beside the torn corner, were 3 words I did not say out loud. "Second stay confirmed." We should have left from the office. That is the sentence I have replayed more than any other. Not because it is useful. It is not. Regret always arrives with perfect information, and fear never gives you that in the moment. At the time, leaving did not feel simple. The tire pressure warning was still glowing on the dashboard. The gravel road behind us was narrow, dark, and full of washboard turns. We had no signal. The nearest town was almost 40 minutes back, and neither of us wanted to discover we had a real tire problem halfway down a forest road with no shoulder. So, we did what people do when they are scared but not yet certain. We checked the site. Site 12 was at the far end of the loop, tucked under cedars so tall the headlights barely touched their lower branches. The post was easy to find. A white number 12 painted on dark wood. A metal clip below it for the permit tag. There was no tent, no car, no people. For 1 second that helped. Then Allison said, "Why is there smoke?" The fire ring sat in the center of the site. It looked dead at first, just blackened wood and gray ash, but when I crouched and held my hand above it, warmth touched my palm. Not much, enough. Someone had used it recently. The tent pad beside it was dry and a perfect rectangle, even though the rest of the ground was damp from the evening air. Not just dry, pressed flat. The shape of a tent that had been there long enough to keep moisture off the dirt. Allison walked to the picnic table. 2 camp chairs were set near the fire ring. One was angled slightly away from the smoke path, turned sideways the way Allison always sat because smoke made her eyes water. I noticed that before she did, and I hated myself for noticing it. On the back of her chair was a towel, blue, thin, frayed along one edge. Allison stopped walking. "That looks like mine," she said. "It's probably a common towel." She looked at me. I opened the duffel bag in the back of the car just to prove it. Her towel was inside. Dry, folded between 2 hoodies. The towel on the chair was wet enough to drip from one corner onto the dirt. Neither of us touched it. On the picnic table under a small stone was a gas station receipt. Same station we had stopped at less than an hour earlier. Bottled water, trail mix, tire gauge, Allison's gum. All the little things I remembered buying while she stood near the restroom trying to get service. I still had our real receipt in my jacket pocket. I took it out and placed both receipts side by side. Same items, same total, same cashier number, different date. The one from the table was from yesterday at 4:52 p.m. Allison backed away from the picnic table and looked around the site like it had become a room she did not want to stand in. "This isn't someone messing with us," she said. I wanted to disagree. Then I saw the trash bag tied to the bear box. The knot was mine. That sounds insane, but I know how I tie trash bags when camping. I twist the top, loop it twice, then tuck the tail through so raccoons cannot pull it loose. Allison had made fun of me for it on 3 trips. The bag at Site 12 was tied exactly that way. I reached for it. Allison grabbed my wrist. "Don't," she said. Her hand was cold. That was when I noticed the stones by the fire ring. 2 flat rocks placed beside the grate close together. I used rocks like that to level a pan when a fire ring grate sat crooked. I had not set those stones there, but I knew why they were there. That was worse than not knowing. The site was not just used. It was arranged like we had used it. Like it knew the small private habits we never would have written down. Behind us inside the car, the tire pressure warning chimed once. I turned toward the sound. The dashboard display had changed. Rear left 0 pounds per square inch. The tire looked perfectly full. I checked the tire with the gauge from the gas station. That was what I focused on because it was physical and small and something I knew how to measure. Numbers made sense. Pressure made sense. A tire was either flat or it was not. The gauge read 34 pounds per square inch. Normal. I checked it twice. Then a 3rd time because I did not trust my hands. Each time the tire was fine. Full, firm, no hiss, no nail, no reason for the dashboard to insist it was empty. Allison stood near the passenger door with her arms wrapped around herself. "We're leaving," she said. "I know. I mean now. I know." But when I opened the driver's door, my phone lit up in the cup holder. I had not put it there. The camera roll was open. There was a new video at the top. The thumbnail showed daylight, not the dark office, not Site 12 under headlights. Daylight. Late afternoon sun through cedar branches, bright enough to see the tent pad and the picnic table clearly. The timestamp said 4:38 p.m. yesterday. Allison saw it too. "Don't play that," she said. I should have listened. The video started with my hand pushing a tent stake into the dirt at Site 12. My hand, my jacket sleeve. The same small scar on my thumb from when I cut myself opening a box cutter at work. Allison was in the frame standing near the picnic table in the same hoodie she was wearing beside me now. Her hair was tied back. She looked tired and angry. The tent was half set up, our tent, the one still packed in the car. In the video, I lowered the camera a little, like I had forgotten I was recording. Allison's voice came from close by. "Nate, stop acting like this is normal." Then my voice answered, breathless and irritated. "If we make it back to the office, don't sign anything." Allison in the video said, "You already said that the first time." The clip went silent for 2 seconds. Then Video Me turned the camera toward my face. I looked awful. Not injured, not possessed, just drained in a way I did not recognize. My eyes kept moving towards something behind the camera, and when I spoke again, my voice dropped so low, I almost missed it. It doesn't start until the paperwork agrees. The video ended there. Allison took one step away from me. I do not blame her. It was my voice, my face, my warning. But I had no memory of any of it, and she knew that. She could see it in me. I don't remember saying that I told her. I know. She said it too fast. That hurt more than if she had doubted me. Then she looked toward the office road. "I remember being mad at you," she said. "What? Not now. Not exactly. I remember standing by that fire ring and telling you to stop explaining things. I remember you saying we already left once." I shook my head. "We didn't. I know we didn't." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed flat. "That's why I'm scared." The phone buzzed again. A calendar alert slid down from the top of the screen. "Checkout scheduled tomorrow, 6:12 a.m. I had never made that event. Allison looked at the alert, then at the dark office road. "No office," she said. "What?" The video said don't sign anything there, so we don't go there. The tire warning chimed again. Rear left 0 pounds per square inch. Then the car doors locked by themselves. All 4. One clean mechanical click. We were standing outside the car. The car unlocked again before I touched the handle. Allison and I just stood there beside it, listening to the locks cycle once more. Locked, unlocked, then silence. The dashboard still glowed through the windshield, red tire warning bright enough to paint the steering wheel. I opened the driver's door and reached across to hit the start button. The engine came on. That felt like a small mercy. Allison got in without arguing. I could tell she wanted to say something about the video, about the office, about the fact that some version of me had warned us not to sign anything. But she did not. She buckled her seatbelt and stared straight ahead like speaking might give the campground another way in. I put the car in drive. The tire warning stayed at 0. The car moved anyway. We left Site 12 slowly, headlights crawling over wet gravel and cedar trunks. I kept both hands on the wheel. The office road was supposed to be simple. Follow the loop, pass the restroom, keep right at the fork. The office would be near the entrance, then the road out after that. I did not turn toward the office. I took the opposite side of the loop. Allison noticed. "Good," she whispered. For about 2 minutes I thought it had worked. The gravel road curved downhill. The trees opened just enough that I could see the sky between them. Then my phone buzzed in the cup holder. Allison picked it up before I could. Her face changed. "What is it?" I asked. She read the screen without looking at me. "Reservation updated." I kept driving. "What does it say?" She swallowed. "Second stay confirmed." The road bent left. Our headlights landed on the white number 12 painted on a wooden post. I hit the brakes. Site 12 was in front of us. Same fire ring, same chairs, same wet towel on the backrest. Same dark tent-shaped rectangle on the pad. We had driven away from it. We had not turned around. Allison made a small sound and covered her mouth. I checked the trip meter. It had added 4.8 miles. The office was maybe half a mile from our site. "We're not walking," Allison said. "I know. We're not going to the office." "I know," but neither of us knew what else to do. Then the radio turned on. Not music, not a station. Just static, low and dry like wind through paper. I pressed the power button. It did not turn off. Under the static, my voice came through. Small, far away. Second check-in accepted. Allison reached for the door handle. "No," I said. She froze. I hated how sharp I sounded, but I could not let her step out into that sight again. Not while the road had just folded us back into it. The static stopped. My phone buzzed again. This time the email was already open. Stay extended. Checkout unavailable until final arrival. There was no sender name, no Campground logo, just plain black text on a white screen. Below it was a button, confirm third arrival. Allison dropped the phone into the cup holder like it had burned her. "We need help," she said. I looked at the top corner of the screen. 1 bar. Not enough for a call most of the time, maybe enough for a text. I dialed 911 anyway. The call did not ring. It opened voicemail. My voicemail. The greeting was my own voice, but not the one I used in real life. It was quiet and close to the microphone. "If this is you, don't confirm anything." The line cut off. The tire warning chimed again. Rear left 0 pounds per square inch. Then the dashboard changed. Rear left replaced. I looked out the window. The rear left tire was still there. Same tire. Same mud on the sidewall. Same valve cap missing from earlier. But beside the fire ring, leaning against one of the chairs, was a tire I had never seen before. Wet. Black. Freshly removed. Allison started crying without sound. I put the car in reverse. This time I did not follow the road. I backed straight over the gravel edge, turned hard between 2 trees, and drove through the empty grass behind the campsite until branches scraped both sides of the car. The whole time the radio stayed silent. That was almost worse, like the campground was waiting to see whether this counted. We did not reach the highway. We reached the office. I still do not understand how. I had driven behind the site through wet grass and low branches, away from the loop road, away from the office, away from anything that looked official. The car bounced over roots hard enough to make the glove box pop open. Allison kept one hand pressed against the dashboard and the other over her mouth. Then the trees opened. The office stood in front of us. Same dark windows, same porch, same weak yellow bulb over the self-check-in board. I stopped the car but left the engine running. Allison stared at the building. "No," she said, "no office." "I know," but the gravel road behind us was gone, not hidden, gone. The headlights showed only trees where the road should have been. The only open space was the short stretch leading to the office porch. My phone buzzed once. Confirm third arrival. I turned the screen face down. "We don't sign anything," Allison said. "Nothing. We don't correct anything." I looked at her then. "What?" She was staring at the self-check-in cabinet beside the porch, not the board with the reservation sleeves. The older cabinet below it, half swollen from rain, with a rusted handle and a strip of tape across the front. "I remember opening that," she said. "You haven't." "I know." Her voice shook. "That's the problem." The porch bulb flickered. Something inside the office rang once. A phone, old, sharp, and brief. Allison flinched. I should have driven through the trees then. I should have ruined the car if that was what it took. Instead, I got out because the front tire hit something, and I thought we had finally done real damage. It was not a rock. It was a yellow permit tag, wet and stuck under the tire. Site 12. The corner was torn. The back had one line in blue ink. "Office requires final acknowledgement." Allison got out before I could stop her. "Nate," she said. "The cabinet." The rusted handle hung open now. I had not touched it. Inside were old envelopes, damp maps, yellow permit tags, and a logbook with a cracked black cover. The bottom corner was swollen from water. The pages had gone thick and wavy. I knew before she opened it that I did not want to see inside. Allison lifted the cover anyway. The first pages were ordinary. Names, dates, site numbers. Some entries faded, some written in pencil. Then came a page where the ink changed to blue and looked too fresh for how old the paper was. Near the middle was a line I saw only because my eyes caught the words before I could look away. "Came back after dark." Above it, half hidden by a water stain, was a name. Daniel Reeves. I did not know that name, but it felt like the kind of name you find on a warning sign after you have already passed the danger. Allison turned the page. "Don't read it," she said. "You're the one turning pages." "I know, I can't stop." That scared me more than the book. The last written page had our names. Nate Carter / Allison Reed, Site 12. First check-in, 4:38 p.m. yesterday. Second stay confirmed 9:17 p.m. tonight. Checkout unavailable. Below that was a blank line. Not empty exactly, indented. Like someone had pressed hard on the page above it, leaving grooves for words that had not been written yet. A blue pen was clipped to the spine. Allison's hand moved toward it. I grabbed her wrist. She looked at me like she had just woken up. "Nate," she whispered, "that's how it keeps you here." From inside the locked office, the phone rang again. Once, then stopped. On the inside cover of the logbook, under a strip of old tape, someone had written in black marker, "Do not correct old entries." The pen rolled loose and fell onto the porch boards. It landed between us. The point was already wet with blue ink. I kicked the pen off the porch. It disappeared between the boards with a small wooden click. For a second, nothing happened. Then the office phone rang again. This time it did not stop. Allison slammed the logbook shut, and the ringing cut off so suddenly it felt like the whole building had been listening through it. She stepped away from the cabinet with both hands up, like she was backing away from an animal that might bite if she moved too fast. "Car," she said. I did not argue. We ran. Not toward the road, not toward the self-check-in board. Straight back to the car with the engine still running and the driver's door hanging open. The porch bulb flickered behind us. I heard paper move inside the cabinet pages turning without wind, but I did not look back. Allison got in first. I threw the car into reverse before my door was fully closed. The tire warning flashed red. Rear left replaced. I ignored it. I backed away from the office, turned hard, and drove over the grass beside the check-in board. Branches scraped the passenger side. Something hit the undercarriage with a hollow metallic crack. Allison gripped the handle above her door and kept saying, "Don't stop," under her breath. I did not. The road appeared only after we left it. That is the best way I can explain it. One moment the headlights showed trees and wet grass. The next, gravel opened in front of us like it had been waiting for the correct angle. I followed it without slowing down. We passed the office. The porch light went out. Allison made a sound beside me. That was what she had remembered. The light going dark, the road after it, the feeling that we had done this before and failed. I kept driving. The gravel road felt longer than it should have. The trees stayed too close. The dashboard clock did not move. My phone had no signal. Behind us, somewhere deep in the campground loop, the radio clicked on by itself. No static this time, just my voice. Final arrival pending. I turned the radio off with the heel of my hand. It stayed off. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it did not. Then all at once, the trees opened onto the highway. Real pavement, white lane lines, a reflective road sign, a logging truck passing fast enough to rock our car with its wind. Allison started crying then, quietly, like she had been saving it until the road proved we were not still inside. My phone found service. 3 emails arrived at once. The first was our original reservation confirmation. The second was a checkout notice. Status checked out. Time tomorrow 6:12 a.m. The third had no subject. I deleted it without opening it. I do not know why. I think some part of me believed that if I did not read it, it could not become true. We stopped at the first gas station we found. It had bright white pumps, a soda machine outside, and a teenager inside mopping the floor like nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. I checked the rear left tire under the pump lights. It was fine. No damage, no leak, no missing valve cap. Allison stood near the trash can with her arms wrapped around herself. "Throw it away," she said. I looked down. I was holding the permit tag. I do not remember taking it from the office. I do not remember picking it up from under the tire, but there it was in my hand. Damp yellow paper, torn corner, Site 12. On the front under our names were the words, "Third arrival pending." I threw it into the gas station trash, not gently. I shoved it down under coffee cups and food wrappers until I could not see yellow anymore. We drove home after that. Neither of us slept. In the morning, Allison found the permit tag in the glove box. It was dry. The torn corner was gone like it had never been removed. The The date printed on it was tomorrow. Under our names written in blue ink was one word, again. I turned it over with 2 fingers. There was another line on the back, smaller, neater, not my handwriting, not Allison's. One vehicle already returned. We sold that car 3 weeks later. I never asked the buyer what happened to the glove box. I was afraid he would tell me it was empty. I was more afraid he would tell me it wasn't. If the road home ever feels too familiar, do one thing before you relax. Check the receipt, check the timestamp, check whether your name is already written somewhere it should not be. Because some places do not keep people there by locking the gate. They just wait for you to arrive again.